I showed a social media post from the president-elect yesterday to an expert in California water policy, a man named Jeffrey Mount. He said, Abby, none of it is true. So this has just been a staggering quantity of wrongness from the president-elect in a very short period of time. And there have been some small specific examples. Like he keeps saying that Governor Newsom refused to sign a so-called water restoration declaration. In fact, no such declaration even exists, as Newsom's office has pointed out. He also said yesterday that they're not using firefighting planes. We've seen those planes, they're there. But more than that, Abby, I think the president-elect has promoted an overarching false narrative.
Yeah, so look, he goes on and covers a lot more, and I'll mention some of them, but I'm sure you've all heard some of that going around. And the thing about misinformation, particularly when it's one of the most powerful people in the world that's spreading it, and there's an entire both mainstream as well as independent media infrastructure designed to signal boost every random thing they say or bleat, is that like everybody just accepts it. You just accept that, well, maybe not the craziest version of what he's saying is true, but there's gotta be something there, right? Or else he wouldn't be talking about it at all. He must have seen some article or something, and now he's building on it. But like, what if there's just nothing? What if none of this has anything to do with it? And when you talk to the actual experts, people who know the actual material, not Donald Trump, who just every 3 years mentions this because he doesn't like Gavin Newsom or whatever, which I understand. You're gonna have like a total misconception of what's actually going on. So Daniel Dale goes on to describe one of like the main points that Trump is trying to make is Gavin Newsom has these environmental concerns that have to do with like Northern or Central California or whatever. And then we have these fires in Southern California. And because he wanted to do an environmental thing in Northern California, we don't have water down here. But when you talk to the actual experts, those don't have anything to do with each other. And also the LA area was not lacking in water. The reservoirs were at high levels. What they're doing is conflating the fact that Pacific Palisades in particular was lacking in water, but even that wasn't a result of the Delta smelt taking it or whatever. It was a combination of hilly, mountainous terrain and infrastructure issues. It is more difficult to get water up there, and they had not actually resolved those problems before these fires. But it doesn't mean that the LA area in general doesn't have water. But the issue is you combine the fact that the people hearing this message, including me, by the way, at the beginning, have even less information than Donald Trump had when he decided to spread the misinformation, that people just sort of accept a lot of this. And we might come out of this experience drawing kind of all the wrong lessons. Again, and as I said yesterday when I was talking about the budget, correcting misinformation doesn't mean that you can't come out of it still thinking that things need to change or that the priorities need to be shifted or that some politicians have done bad jobs. But if you're gonna come to those conclusions, you should at least go into them with accurate information. Brett, what do you think?
I mean, it's just so convenient. Oh my God, Donald Trump says that the guy on the other side, the one person who really has the retail politics and overall communication skills to threaten Republicans in the next election is Gavin Newsom, and he's at fault for everything. It's so stupid. He literally is kind of speaking as though you can just turn a knob and get the water from NorCal to SoCal. Also, most of the water does come from there anyway. Like there's a lot of runoff that goes to various reservoirs, but the way you count how much water California has is by how much frozen water is in the Sierra Nevadas. Because most of the industry has polluted well water. There are forever chemicals all over the giant aquifers under California. And it's a lot of aerospace is just completely dumped crap in there that is seeped in leaky tanks. It is seeped into and contaminated our groundwater. Oh, that's a thing. But Donald Trump just is making this up. When people are saying like they ran out of water because there was no water, no. The whole reason that this area is such a tinderbox is it rained a lot for the last 2 years and then stopped last May.
Yeah.
And that means you have a lot of extra growth you wouldn't normally have. You can make criticisms like we need to get rid of a lot of the really high brush and we need to clear it out. You have to make criticisms like, yeah, building in the Palisades up that canyon is really tough because you're right next to a lot of larger growth that's been there for a while. Those are very dangerous things. And I also hate people who show up and say like, yo, let Malibu burn. Like my grandfather was the Malibu locksmith. His neighbors are still living there. When you could be a locksmith or someone in the trade, a trade person, and you could still own a house. Like there's a bunch of families that have just been living there since when it was bum F Egypt out there. Like that's the thing, and you're just like, let it burn. And would you go up to people in Oklahoma and be like, sorry you lost your house in a tornado? Like you shouldn't have built in an area with tornadoes. Go to someone in Florida, you shouldn't have built in a place with hurricanes. No, it's a natural disaster. It's like a regular, like people know. It's not like you're showing up and be like, this is a really dangerous place to live. It's like, yeah, we know. There's natural disasters everywhere. And yes, we can get frustrated with things like, yeah, they have to cut out like, you have to cut off the power to areas so that the power lines don't spark more fires. But then when you do that, the pumps to certain water supplies fail. Well, why don't we have backup generators at those pumps? That's a real great question because they said they had to delay for that. But you can't show up and be like, it's just such a Donald Trump thing that he's empowered en masse in the public. Like people used to sit around like their water coolers and say, I know better than everybody. But you just looked at like 5 other people. And then you'd watch the news and you'd see like actual things that make sense and you'd say, okay, I got it. And there's a lot wrong with the old news system. But like what has happened now is a different other problem. We have to at least acknowledge that everybody's running around there telling you all this stuff that, the only way you can tell how widespread it is if it ends up on Rogan. And by that point, now you want to talk about a tinderbox, you talk about those kinds of distribution mechanisms.
100%. Yes. And by the way, like people are trying to do their best. Like regular people who are spreading this information aren't necessarily trying to deceive. They believe it because it's the best reporting that they had. When I initially saw that $17 million cut to the fire department, that's what was being reported. And so, but then when I learned more, I shared more. Regular people, can't devote as much time to analyzing the news or whatever. But that said, that's for us regular people. For a Donald Trump or whatever, he should know everything because he has ultimate access to all this information. Members make a difference here at TYT. You help make the show happen and we see you in the chat with your loyalty badge. Click the join button to become a member today.